This is case subject SCP-049, aka the Plague Doctor. He goes by many names, of course, but for the purpose of clarity, I'll be sticking with the Plague Doctor in this video. The unfortunate gentleman he killed in the footage is an SCP doctor tasked with interviewing him. I'll be giving more on the story later on. Subject SCP-049 belongs to the Yucca class, and it has to be contained in standard and secure humanoid containment cell of about 5 by 6 meters in dimension. In the events that the subject needs to be transported, he must be kept sedated and restrained with a Class 3 humanoid restriction harness, which also includes a locking collar and some extension restraints. He must also be monitored by not less than 2 armed SCP guards during transportation. Although the subject tends to be cooperative with some members and staffs of the Foundation, the orders given were to meet any outburst or change in behavior from SCP-049 with elevated force. Further instructions also prevent SCP personnel from coming in direct contact with the subject during his outburst, and in the event that he does go crazy on them, personnel were instructed to make use of lavender as a calming mechanism for SCP-049, as it has been proven to be effective on the entity in the past. Once the subject is calm, he tends to immediately turn back to his usual compliant self. He even returns to his containment cell with little resistance. I cannot say for sure if the lavender used by the SCP Foundation to calm the entity down is a special one, but what I do know is that all the lavender flowers that that my informant saw looked organic, and it didn't look like they were optimized in any way. And since the documents don't say much about the nature of the flower, I'll just leave it at that for now. Upon further studying of SCP-049's files, I found out that the Foundation at the time also provided the entity with fresh corpses of dead animals once every 2 weeks, and it was indicated that the subject makes use of the bodies for his study, or as the Foundation tagged them, SCP-049-2. And due to some mishaps between the Plague Doctor and the Foundation, all instances of SCP-049-2 were removed from the entity containment cell and destroyed. Furthermore, the subject was also restricted from interacting with human subjects, with further orders given that any request from SCP-049 for a human subject should be denied. The subject is a humanoid entity about 1.9 meters in height, with a striking resemblance of a medieval Plague Doctor, although the subject does appear to be wearing both the thick robes and ceramic mask of which is distinctive to the profession. Further investigation showed that the garments grew out of the SCP-049's body over time, and the garment has basically become a part of the subject's body now, indistinguishable from what it had before the growth of the garment. X-ray tests also indicated that the entity doesn't have a humanoid skeletal structure beneath its outer layer, mostly because of the misplacement of certain bones in its skeletal structure. Further looking into its personality revealed that the SCP-049 can speak a variety of languages. However, the entity prefers to speak in either English or medieval French. It is also cordial and cooperative with Foundation staffs, but it would sometimes get irritated or aggressive whenever it feels like this is the presence of some kind of force, which it calls pestilence. No one knows what it means by the term pestilence, but from the looks of things, it is very important to the subject because it can go as far as killing whoever it feels is infected with this pestilence if, at the time, the subject was left unchecked. Another feature that makes this subject dangerous is its ability to stop all biological functions of an organism through direct skin contact. How it does this is still unknown, and even the autopsies performed on the SCP-049's victims proved inconclusive. But I believe the most baffling part is the fact that the subject claims that his method are the best way to get rid of the pestilence, considering that none of his surgeries have been successful so far. They were successful in one thing though: creating instances of a different kind of organism entirely, which brings us back to SCP-0492. These are reanimated corpses created by SCP-049. They look alive with the ability to perform basic motor skills and respond to their surroundings. However, these reanimations lack all memories or mental functions of their previous life. Cases even report that these reanimations can become extremely aggressive if they are provoked, or if SCP-049 tells them to, despite their weak mobility and state. The funny part about these living corpses is the fact that SCP-049 tags them as cured, despite their appearance. Before his capture, there is a possibility that the subject had long been trying to perfect his surgeries, because from the data I got from various parts of the world which reported similar cases as SCP-0492, I can conclude that earlier cases were a lot worse. These reanimations could not move at all, nor did they respond to environmental change, and surprisingly enough, they didn't last long, with each cases dying within 1 hour after their reanimation. I also got a second data from an underground black market sale. As you can see from these footages, the subject is still very much alive and has been alive for more than a month since I last saw it. However, that class of SCP-0492 also lacked mobility. However, unlike the previous class, this class did respond to change in its environment. It would also sometimes change color depending on the temperature in its room or enclosure. And the third case are these current reanimations. They only got better after the SCP Foundation captured the Plague Doctor and also assisted him in his research by giving him lots of corpses to work on. So, in a way, could SCP-049 actually be telling the truth about some kind of pestilence? And will he ever get his equations right? Or is it just a mad scientist that is shooting too close to the sun? We will certainly conclude an answer if we know more about the subject. On January 5th, 2015, civilians reported sighting a strange figure enter the house of a fellow neighbor. And not long after, the fellow said that he heard screaming and cries for help about 30 minutes before sudden silence. The SCP Foundation was very quick to react with this information and dispatched an Alpha team to immediately secure the town and the house. During the raid, the Alpha Squad was first engaged on by aggressive instances of SCP-0492, with reports claiming that all the Plague Doctor did was write notes in his journal, and surprisingly, he willingly turned himself in with no resistance whatsoever. While in the SCP Foundation custody, Dr. Raymond Ham at Site-85 was tasked with interviewing the subject. His interview results suggested that the entity does appear to behave like a human in terms of communication and body language, but it does give whoever is around a bit of a strange sense of unease, which would suggest that there is something very uncanny about the subject. According to the doctor's observatory logs, SCP-049 spends all day studying and performing surgeries on the corpses provided to him, all while taking notes in his journal, even if the surgery created an instance of SCP-0492 or not. At a certain point, everything seemed to be going well with the interview between Dr. Ham and SCP-049, but over time, the subject became very unhappy with its subjects and the results of his surgeries, and it continued for several months, during which the subject never showed any signs of aggressive behaviors. But on April 16, 2017, Dr. Ham was killed by SCP-049 as he was about to conduct another routine interview with the subject. At the time, there was a lapse in the security protocol of the site, and apparently Dr. Ham didn't even activate the in-chamber emergency system, which means that his body was not discovered for at least 3 hours after his death. In the aftermath of this incident, the subject was later interviewed by Dr. Theron Sherman, who, in this interview, demanded an explanation as to why the subject killed Dr. Ham. But all the entity kept saying was that he had cured him, and that the Foundation should let him continue perfecting his work for, in his words, the cure. Not long after this interview, Dr. Theron revoked all his freedom within the SCP Foundation, which is why the second containment orders were given for the subject. Some footages also revealed that both SCP-049 and SCP-353, aka Vector, have come in contact during a containment breach in the facility. The nature of this union can't be discussed, but I can say that the end result may not be good for humanity, especially since they were joined by 2 other SCP subjects, 890, aka the Rocket Surgeon, and 297, aka Steely Dan, both belonging to Safe Class. Weirdly enough, the video stops recording both after 890 and 297 arrive, and resumed after the containment breach was fixed, which means not many people know of this union. Another union was formed this time with SCP-035, aka the Possessive Mask. With its help, SCP-049 managed to escape the facility, and his current location remains unknown to the SCP Foundation, although there have been several reports of its sightings in different parts of the world, one of which suggests that a strange robbed man stood still and watched another man die while uttering the words, "You don't have the pestilence." Clearly, not just anyone would say that, so it must have been SCP-049. However, with my previous data, I would naturally conclude that the subject was a perfectionist who views humans as imperfect beings or pestilence. But with the new data, it could be that the pestilence he is referring to is life, and he is going by the principle of reanimated life is the perfect life. But if this is the case, why would he not reanimate the body of the dead man? It could be that the man was a perfected reanimation made by another SCP subject, although this seems unlikely. It is very possible. It could also be that his union with other SCP subjects could be a new means for him to find the perfect formula to make a new life free of pestilence. So, there is a possibility that the fourth class of SCP-0492 might actually be the cure. Well, it's either that or there is no cure, no pestilence, and SCP-049 just wants to help his other SCP friends rid the world of humans. I can't say that this is the case, but I can't dismiss it either. So, what do you think? Is the Plague Doctor right? Is the pestilence real? Give me your answers in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to follow me on my journey to uncover all acts of the SCP Foundation. Until then, my friends.